time to cook with Susan Beck. In my previous video, I showed you how to make a lemon herb roasted whole chicken in the crock pot. Just lickety-split, the most simple chicken recipe that I have found, and it's just so tender and moist and it falls off the bone, and you know, it'd be great for a Christmas or New Year's dinner, or sometime when you're busy but you just want to have a good dinner after with the company, but you don't want to spend all your time in the kitchen. Well, today I'm going to show you how to turn the broth that is left inside into gravy. So we'll look at that broth in just a second. First, we're going to make our white sauce, or our roux, our thickening agent. Roux, R-O-U-X, a French word. So, you know, I usually kind of just eyeball this, but today I'm going to do some measuring just to make it easier for those of you who are maybe a little scared of cooking and making gravy. So I'm going to use about 1/4 cup of cornstarch. Flour works as well. I don't know, I guess cornstarch I kind of like better, but it's up to you. Whichever you have in the house will work. And then I just kind of look at how thick it is as I make this. I do want it to be a liquid, but it needs to have not too liquidy because it needs to be a thickening agent. So I'm going to start with 1/2 cup of flour, sorry, 1/2 cup of milk into my 1/4 cup cornstarch. And I'm just going to stir that around. If you've watched my oobleck video on Susie the Silly Scientist, these are the same ingredients basically, cornstarch and some liquid. So I want it a little runnier though than I did for my oobleck. Now this will have to be stirred again right before we put it into our broth on the stove top, because that cornstarch will settle out of this suspension. So here's all the broth from our chicken, and there's a few little flecks of chicken and some spices in there, and we're going to pour that into a saucepan. I think it's easiest to make gravy here instead of in the crock pot itself because I can control my heat a little bit better, and I like to get this up to a good hard simmer before I add anything else to it. So we will heat this, and then we'll be adding the cornstarch and water. Again, we'll have to do some stirring of that because it does thicken. As we move along in the process, we'll decide if we need some salt or some pepper or even a little chicken bouillon. So it's already starting to bubble around the edges a bit because it came out of this stone part of the crock pot at a fairly warm temperature already. A wire whisk works nicely for gravy. Again, I'm going to give this a quick stir, and then I am going to slowly pour it into the broth. A lot of times I don't even use all of this. It just depends on how much broth you have and how much thickening you will need. You can see a bit of lightening in the color since I'm adding white to our golden brown broth. And as it bubbles, it will get thicker. I'm going to add a little more. Again, work slowly. If it gets too thick on you, simply add some water. Now I'm looking at this and I think it's a nice thickness. One little trick for telling is when you put it on a spoon, it should kind of coat the back of the spoon. And this does quite nicely. My next thing I'm going to do is to give it a taste. Now when I tasted that, I could really taste that lemon from the chicken, but I think it could use just a little bit more of a chicken flavor. So I'm going to add, about 1/2 teaspoon of my chicken base, my soup base here. Any chicken bouillon would work. And then I would like to salt it. I just think the gravy needs a little bit of a saltiness as it goes onto those potatoes. About 1/2 teaspoon, 1/4 teaspoon. Again, you're going to want to taste it again and judge. And I really am a big fan of pepper. You'll have to make your own decision on that, but I'm giving several cranks around on my pepper grinder there. All right, I think it's time to give it a taste again and see how we've enhanced it. I think the chicken flavor comes through a little more. I still have a hint of that lemon, and the saltiness is definitely a good thing. All right, I have a gravy boat that I'm going to pour this into because we're going to have some mashed potatoes and gravy along with some peas tonight as I serve up that lemon roasted chicken. So hopefully this video helped you learn a few tips and not make you so frightened of making gravy.